It starts without warning. You're not searching for anything, not really. Just scrolling, drifting through the noise. Then you see it, a thumbnail so ordinary it shouldn't matter, a soldier in silhouette, a little girl holding a note, a coffin shaking mid-frame. It's not dramatic. It's delicate, precise. Like it was designed for the part of you that still grieves things you never speak of. You click. One video becomes 2. Then 4. Then you're hours deep, eyes burning at 2:47 a.m., listening to a stranger's voice whisper something that feels more familiar than your own thoughts. You can't remember why you started watching. But now you can't look away. And underneath the softness, the piano chords, the slow fades, the trembling monologues, is something colder. Sharper. Something surgical. Touching Moment Stories doesn't just tell tales. It repeats them. Every upload follows the same emotional choreography. Betrayal, pain, near redemption, pause. Then the voice. He looked at her and said nothing. The phrase appears in over 90 videos, always at the moment of false catharsis. Not quite resolution. Not quite closure. It lingers. Viewers in the comments mention crying without knowing why, binge watching until dawn, feeling like they recognized the story, but couldn't place from where. Some even describe visual hallucinations, faces blurring, hearing whispers through headphones, the sense that they'd already lived what they just watched. These aren't just dramatic stories. They're psychological rituals, each one subtly repeating trauma loops that mirror cognitive imprinting techniques used in immersive PTSD therapy. The thumbnails, once studied side by side, reveal the algorithm's fingerprints. Over-the-shoulder shots, tear tracks, children framed slightly off-center like surveillance stills. Grain filters simulate documentary realism, even when the stories are entirely fictional. Emotional realism, not factual truth, is the priority. The goal is to feel just real enough that your brain stops resisting and starts remembering. These videos aren't random. They're reverse-engineered for resonance, feeding on emotional memory like a virus that looks like a lullaby. Then there's the frequency. Since mid-2022, the channel has posted over 500 videos, an unsustainable pace for a human creator. And yet, the voice remains the same. The tone never shifts. Not once. It suggests automation or worse, scripted empathy. AI voices trained on confessionals, recreated trauma narratives, perhaps even audio fragments from real, unreleased testimonies. Some episodes recycle near-identical scripts with slight changes to names, settings, or racial identifiers, same story beats, same final shot, same line. And then, she was gone. Why retell the same tale 100 ways? Unless the repetition is the purpose. Unless someone is testing which version triggers the deepest response. Late-night viewership spikes around 1 to 3 a.m. have been statistically verified. The trauma window, when emotional regulation is lowest and unresolved memory is most easily triggered. Some theorists now refer to the channel as a whisper factory, a content mill not for entertainment, but for emotional resonance engineering. An echo chamber of pre-packaged despair, designed not just to evoke empathy, but to study it, to collect data on what breaks us. And maybe, just maybe, to learn how to replicate it. So ask yourself, why are you still watching? And more importantly, who's watching you? Ask ChatGPT. It started with a whisper. Not in the video itself, but in the comments, tucked between prayer emojis and broken-hearted strangers saying they cried again. Someone said, "That name, Ben, I swear he was in my group home." At first, it sounded like coincidence, until someone else replied, "I remember the basement too." The phrase had shown up in 5 different videos, always mumbled by a child on the verge of disappearing. Then the flood came, survivors messaging each other, cross-referencing timelines. Ben wasn't just a name. It was a tether to something real. Something buried. The stories weren't just sad. They were familiar. Too familiar. Across dozens of uploads, plotlines began to echo verified but obscure trauma records, foster care reports sealed by the state, CPS cases that never reached trial, confessions extracted from children too young to know they were building patterns. One episode titled "He Called Her Mom," and then vanished follows a script nearly identical to a real disappearance filed in Arkansas in 2013, except the names are slightly altered. Lucci instead of Lucy. Elliot, with 2 T's, not 1. In isolation, it's just storytelling. In repetition, it's something darker, trauma lightly sanded down and offered back to the public as fiction. Forensic analysts digging into early videos noticed something unsettling. The voices, particularly those of children, bore uncanny resemblances to archived 911 tapes. Not just similar in tone, identical in cadence, hesitation, breath. AI voice synthesis tools today can clone anyone with as little as 20 seconds of source audio. And what better source than public emergency calls that no one thinks to cross-check? One researcher, known only as Silent Echo on Twitter, flagged 6 voice overlays that matched biometric patterns from a missing person hotline archive. The results were quietly taken down. In the source code of a now-deleted video description, someone found a corrupted metadata tag, post_ID equals 3984_r/unresolved/ben_file. That thread, from /r/unresolved mysteries, was wiped in 2017 after its author, a former youth caseworker, claimed that certain fictional YouTube stories were mimicking the phrasing used by her former clients. She died under undisclosed circumstances that same year. So the question isn't just whether these stories are dramatizations. It's whether they're masks. Fiction wrapped around raw confession. Scenes edited just enough to pass through moderation filters, but not enough to hide the truth from those who lived it. What if touching moments isn't exploiting real pain, but laundering it? What if someone out there isn't trying to make sense of their story, they're trying to hide it in plain sight, hoping no one remembers the basement? And what if they weren't the only one? She doesn't speak. Not in any meaningful way. Not across 14 separate videos, not in the dozens of roles she supposedly plays, and never in full focus. A girl. Always a girl. Maybe 8, maybe 10. Dressed in a worn blue coat that never changes. Her name shifts from episode to episode, Emily in one, Samara in another, June later still, but it's the same face. The same posture. The same eyes that never look directly into the lens. She is not the main character. She is the fracture in the frame. The thing your eyes find in the background, always just before the turn. Always just before the story veers into sorrow. And then she's gone. No explanation. No resolution. No body. No ending. They call her Blue Coat Girl. She appears in He Froze When He Saw Her. In She Whispered, It's Not Over. In The Girl Who Pointed at the Bus. Stories where children vanish, or whisper secrets that shatter marriages, or show up alone on roads no one remembers building. And in each one, she is the same. Standing at strange angles. Always alone. Never blinking at the right time. Her movements too smooth. Her silence too loud. Some viewers assumed she was just an actress, a recurring figure for thematic continuity. But others looked deeper. And what they found was absence. Searches through acting databases, IMDb, Casting Call Hub, even facial recognition portals used in independent film, came back blank. No professional records. No credits. No names. Reverse image searches on stills pulled from the videos bounced back not to casting calls or social media, but to touching moments stories itself, recursive links leading nowhere. Like a digital hall of mirrors designed to loop. One determined viewer, using a forensic facial mapping plugin, extracted coordinates from 5 episodes and fed them into a biometric overlay comparison tool. The result was not a match. It was a non-completion. The system couldn't finish mapping her face. Key nodes were missing, or blocked. Deliberately. Then came the location dig. In one of the earlier episodes, she held a note and ran. Someone paused a wide shot and noticed a half-collapsed sign in the background. Faded, overgrown, barely legible, Waymore Child Services Center. A facility in Michigan, shuttered in 2009 after an embezzlement scandal and a series of child custody disputes that were quietly sealed. Court records were purged in 2012 after a server loss. But a digital archivist on Reddit claimed to have found partial files indicating a Jane Doe 517, A child transferred to an unlisted guardian after an administrative override. No photos. No follow-up. Just a name. And then, digital dust. But the most unsettling find came from a surveillance still, grainy, black and white, dated February 17, 2007. A girl in a blue coat, standing alone outside the service center at 3:14 a.m. Same posture. Same hairline. Same tilt of the head. No one ever identified her. She was logged briefly, then lost. But her figure was preserved in the still, the same exact shape as the girl we now see replayed again and again across dozens of stories. Slightly out of focus. Always about to run. Always fading into something we can't quite follow. Some now believe Blue Coat Girl isn't just a fictional creation or an AI asset stitched into pre-written scripts. They believe she's real. Or was real. A child pulled into a system that never gave her back. A nameless figure smuggled through narrative. Some claim she's a symbol. Others think she's a confession. A memory that someone is hiding in plain sight, feeding her back to us through fiction, piece by piece, until she disappears for good. But the real question isn't just who she is. It's why she returns. Because something, or someone, wants her seen. Wants her remembered. And when you close your eyes tonight, you might realize you already have. They say we tell stories to heal. To shape the chaos. To reclaim the memory before it swallows us. But what happens when the stories aren't meant to heal, but to bury? You start watching touching moments because it feels safe. Familiar. The kind of grief that fits into a screen. But then something shifts. A line said too perfectly. A moment too specific. You find yourself whispering, "I've heard this before." Not in a film. Not in fiction. In real life. In courtrooms. In whispered therapy sessions. In late-night memories clawing their way out. There's a reason it feels too real. Because maybe it is. Across content farms operating under dead LLCs, across channels with no known creators, you start to see it. The same stories told again and again. Minor tweaks. A father becomes a mother, a fire becomes a flood, but the bones stay the same. Dialogue repeated word for word. Shots framed identically. Emotional arcs cloned. And then someone maps IPs. Tracks server signatures. Traces voice models. It all loops back to a cluster of shell networks in Estonia, Kyiv, rural Utah. Places once flagged for experimental media testing. The stories are not evolving, they're replicating. Engineered and recycled grief, dressed in new pain, fed to you as comfort. Then came the episode. 78 minutes long. Marketed as a special feature. It was just another tale, a lost child, a broken parent, a sacrifice. Until a researcher fed the transcript into a pattern recognition tool, expecting narrative symmetry. What it returned was not narrative. It was a nearly line-for-line emotional match with a declassified Mkultra testimony from 1974. Adjusted for modern time, for age, for syntax, but the emotional pacing was identical. Dissonance, confusion, obedience, then silence. The same breathing patterns. The same pause before the word, stay. This wasn't a coincidence. This was extraction. Trauma repackaged. Dissociation converted into screen-friendly arcs. And then the comments, where the mask slips. Survivors, real ones, saying they watched touching moments not for comfort, but to see their pain reflected back at them. To study it from the outside. To find control in the repetition. One wrote, "I never told anyone about the box under the stairs. But here, someone knows." Another, "It's like someone recorded the nightmares I couldn't explain." These aren't reactions to fiction. They're symptoms of recognition. And in the background, across scattered episodes, a phrase returns, not what you need, but what you must keep. Always said by a child. Always in a whisper. Never explained. The phrase doesn't fit the dialogue. It feels older. Like it doesn't belong to the story, but to the storyteller. So what's really happening here? Are we watching for healing, or participating in a ritual? Are we consuming pain, or rehearsing it? Someone is collecting emotional patterns. Someone is tracking how grief lands, how it loops, how it sticks. The stories feel safer than memory. But memory doesn't need a monetized replay button. Maybe it was never about helping us understand our pain. Maybe it's about seeing how much of it we're willing to relive. There is no about section. No crew bios. No director's commentary. Just a channel name that sounds like comfort, touching moment stories, and a flood of cinematic grief delivered with surgical precision. Every video polished. Every voiceover consistent. Every silence engineered to hold you just long enough to feel seen. And yet, no one knows who's behind it. No visible team. No studio ID. Just uploads. Perfectly timed. Always around 2 a.m. in your time zone. Always right when you can't sleep. At first it seems like art. Then it feels like control. And then one night, a message. Not in a video. In a screenshot shared by a digital forensics account, flagged and removed within hours. One sentence, written in plain text over a black screen. You're not watching stories. You're being tested. Most shrugged it off as bait. But researchers didn't. WHOIS records for the domain hosting early channel trailers revealed proxy chains bouncing through Moldova, Singapore, and Phoenix, a geopolitical triangle documented in multiple psychological operations from 2008 to 2013, including cognitive warfare training environments. One researcher found that the YouTube copyright claims for several episodes point to LSW Holdings, a dissolved Delaware LLC last listed on a Pentagon white paper about empathy modeling in media ecosystems. It was supposedly shuttered in 2016. But their IP blocks are still active. Still connected. Then came the sound. In The Little Boy Said, He's Still Breathing. Someone ran a spectrogram analysis on background audio. Beneath the music, almost imperceptible, was reverse-layered Morse code. The message decoded, feed protocol echo understand. No known media protocol matches. No response from YouTube when flagged. The audio was replaced 3 days later with a slightly altered version. The original file is now considered lost. But the most disturbing trace didn't come from the videos. It came from the comments. A metadata tracker identified a pattern of auto-scraping, usernames, phrases, timestamps, cross-referenced in real time against public trauma therapy forums. Some of these forums were supposed to be private. Others were defunct, closed years ago after moderation failure. Still, the cross-matches were clear. People who commented, "This reminds me of my sister," on YouTube had been part of archived support groups for childhood survivors. One user posted the same sentence, word for word, 6 years apart, on 2 different platforms. Almost like a memory planted or tracked. So what are we really watching? A storytelling channel? Or a mirror held up to our psyche? Are the stories designed to resonate? Or to trigger? To find what breaks us? What heals us? What pulls us back again and again when we swore we'd stopped crying? And if this is a test, who is collecting the results? The channel doesn't ask for subscribers. It never sells merch. It has no face. Just silence. And in that silence, someone is watching. But it might not be you.